Every day, you walk into battles you do not see. They are not fought with swords or shields, but with glances, whispers, and words that cut quietly. This is the hidden war of everyday minds. The people around you, colleagues, relatives, friends. Some of them are genuine, but others wear the mask of kindness while feeding on your weakness. Machiavelli understood this world long before social media, long before modern politics. He knew that power in every form is not only fought for on the battlefield, but also in the rooms where smiles hide intentions. The truth is uncomfortable. The world is full of toxic people who live through manipulation. They do not seek peace, they seek control. They thrive on making others react. And the moment you react, you lose the game. They use gossip to stain your name, pity to hide their deceit, and anger to make you look unstable. Their weapon is not strength, it is subtlety. They turn emotions into leverage. Machiavelli would tell you that the first step to winning this invisible war is to see it. He once said, "He who deceives will always find those who allow themselves to be deceived." This is not just political wisdom, it's personal survival. Toxic people win only because others refuse to believe such manipulation exists. They live in denial, thinking, surely they wouldn't mean harm. But Machiavelli's world, and ours, does not reward naivete. When you start recognizing the signs, the small interruptions, the strategic flattery, the false concern, you begin to see the pattern. They plant seeds of doubt, then water them with charm. One day they admire you, the next, they undermine you. They want you emotional because an emotional person cannot think clearly. They seek to control your mind through confusion. And once they achieve that, they own your reactions. But Machiavelli's lesson is not to become paranoid. It is to become aware. He teaches that survival requires perception, the ability to read motives without judgment, to see the game without becoming part of it. Every toxic person is driven by insecurity. Their manipulation is a defense mechanism to hide their own fear of insignificance. When you understand this, you begin to see through the mask. You realize this is not about you. It is about their struggle for control. Machiavelli would whisper, observe, don't absorb. When someone tries to provoke you, do not let their words enter your bloodstream. Stand still. Watch. Collect information. He believed that knowledge of others' intentions is the foundation of power. And in this hidden war, your awareness becomes your armor. You begin to notice the tone that shifts when you succeed, the praise that turns into sarcasm, the smile that hides resentment. You stop reacting, and that terrifies them, because toxic people live off reaction. When you no longer provide it, they lose their grip. You break the cycle of control. Machiavelli's genius was understanding that power is not always about domination, sometimes it's about stillness. The predator expects fear. When it finds calm, it hesitates, and that hesitation is where you regain your power. But awareness comes with a cost: isolation. Once you see the hidden war, you cannot unsee it. You begin to walk differently, speak less, observe more. You start protecting your mental energy, and some will call you distant, cold, or proud. Yet, Machiavelli would remind you that detachment is not arrogance. It's intelligence. The fewer battles you fight, the more energy you have for the wars that matter. He believed that in politics, as in life, most people are predictable when driven by emotion. Anger exposes weakness, jealousy reveals fear, desperation betrays motive. Once you recognize these signs, you can navigate even the most toxic environment with quiet precision. You stop trying to fix people and start mastering your response. That is the turning point, when you stop reacting and start directing. And when you master this, something remarkable happens. You begin to project calm confidence, a power that needs no explanation. The toxic ones sense it and feel unease. They can no longer pull you into their chaos. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is power. Machiavelli wrote that a leader should be both loved and feared, but never dependent on either. The same applies here. Do not seek approval from those who poison peace. Let your actions, not your explanations, define your worth. The hidden war of everyday minds is not about fighting others. It is about mastering yourself. When you recognize manipulation and choose not to react, you evolve beyond the reach of small minds. You begin to live with deliberate strength, not loud, not reactive, but composed. Machiavelli would call this the art of calculated peace. It is not the peace of ignorance, but the peace of understanding. Every insult becomes a lesson in restraint. Every betrayal, a reminder of discernment. Every toxic encounter, an opportunity to refine your strategy. And slowly, you stop being a player in their game. You become the board on which the game is played. You see moves before they happen. You learn to win without confrontation, through silence, through patience, through unshakable clarity. In the end, the war of everyday minds will never end, but you can rise above it. You cannot control who is toxic, but you can control how much access they have to your peace. Machiavelli's wisdom remains timeless. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally. Learn quickly, observe deeply, act strategically. Because life rewards not the loudest, but the most aware, and awareness, quiet, calm and clear, is the ultimate power. There is a kind of power that speaks without words. A power that moves not through argument or aggression, but through silence. Machiavelli understood this long before psychology gave it a name. He saw that silence is not weakness, it is strategy. Those who talk too much reveal too much. Those who listen carefully rule quietly. In every interaction, people expose fragments of their minds, in tone, in pauses, in slips of speech. When you remain silent, you give them the stage. And, in their eagerness to perform, they uncover their truth. The moment you stop trying to be understood and start trying to understand, you begin to collect information, the rarest currency in a world addicted to noise. Machiavelli would tell you, the people are not as mysterious as they think. They announce their fears through exaggeration, their envy through compliments, and their weakness through anger. All you must do is listen, not only with your ears but with your eyes, your intuition, your patience. Silence gives you the space to see the power dynamics in motion. Who seeks control, who craves validation, who hides behind words. He believed that one who observes the crowd from the shadows learns more than those who stand in the center. The silent observer becomes a mirror, reflecting, not reacting, and in that reflection, people begin to show their true nature. The world misreads this quietness as submission, but Machiavelli would smile knowingly. Silence is the first act of dominance. When you do not respond, they start to wonder what you are thinking. Uncertainty becomes your weapon. Toxic people, manipulators, and opportunists fear silence more than confrontation. Confrontation gives them engagement, energy to feed on. But silence starves them. They push harder, trying to provoke a reaction, but the calm stare, the measured breath, the patient pause, these unsettle them. You deny them the satisfaction of control. Machiavelli wrote that men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see but few can feel. In other words, appearances create perception, and in silence you appear composed, wise, in control. To remain silent is not to be passive. It is an active decision to conserve power. Every word you don't say saves you from misinterpretation. Every silence gives you time to think, to analyze, to understand. Machiavelli would remind you that impulsive speech has destroyed more alliances than open war. People reveal their plans too early, their anger too quickly, their pride too loudly. But the silent thinker waits, watches, and acts when others have exhausted themselves. Imagine this in your daily life, in arguments, in meetings, in relationships. While others rush to prove themselves right, you remain calm. You listen. You observe how emotion drives logic away. You see how insecurity disguises itself as arrogance. You recognize how chaos unfolds when people cannot sit quietly with themselves. You do not join the noise, you study it, because every outburst, every accusation, every attempt to provoke you tells you what truly controls them. Machiavelli understood that silence intimidates the unsteady. It forces others to fill the void with words, and in doing so, they expose their intentions. The greatest negotiators in history have always been great listeners. They speak last. And when they do, their words carry weight because they have absorbed everything. The longer you listen, the sharper your strategy becomes. But silence is not enough without observation. Observation is the art of collecting truths hidden between the lines. Machiavelli's genius lay in his ability to read human nature, not through what people declared, but through what they concealed. He would watch a prince's gestures, a diplomat's hesitation, a soldier's tone. In those small signals, he saw the empire's future. In your world, it's the same. Watch how people behave when they believe no one is watching. Notice who interrupts others, who takes credit quietly, who blames loudly, who flatters too often. These are the modern courtiers, dressed differently but playing the same old games. When you train your observation, life becomes transparent. You no longer take words at face value, you read motives beneath them. To master silence and observation, you must also master your ego. The ego wants to be seen, heard, validated. It wants to defend, to explain, to win. But Machiavelli would warn, explanation is surrender. The moment you explain yourself to someone unworthy, you give them authority over your worth. So, you stay silent. You don't argue with lies, you outlast them. You don't chase validation, you let time reveal the truth. And this practice transforms you. You begin to feel an inner strength that doesn't need to prove itself. People notice your composure and mistake it for mystery, but it is clarity. You have learned that silence speaks louder than outrage, and observation cuts deeper than confrontation. You no longer react to every provocation, you choose your battles with surgical precision. That is the essence of Machiavellian wisdom: controlled expression, disciplined perception. In time, silence turns into presence. You walk into rooms and speak little, but people feel your focus. They sense the weight of your restraint. You no longer waste words to convince anyone, your actions and timing do the work. Machiavelli would call this the elegance of quiet power, power that neither begs nor shouts, but simply is. And when you pair silence with observation, something profound happens. You gain foresight. You begin to anticipate behavior, to predict outcomes. It is not magic, it is psychology. When you study patterns long enough, chaos becomes predictable. You begin to lead not by force, but by understanding. And understanding, Machiavelli would say, is the highest form of control. So, when life fills with noise, when people provoke, when manipulation surrounds you, remember this: silence is not retreat. It is the preparation of the wise. Observe patiently, act strategically, and speak only when your words can alter the balance of power. Because in the world of noise, the quietest mind always wins. When you live among people, manipulation is inevitable. Some disguise it as charm, others as concern, and many as kindness. But Machiavelli never saw manipulation as purely evil. To him, it was part of the natural order of human ambition, the invisible hand that moves society, politics, and relationships alike. He would tell you that to survive, you must not only recognize manipulation, you must transform it into momentum. You cannot escape the game, so you learn to play it better. In every era, from Florence to the modern world, manipulation thrives on emotion. The manipulator feeds on your reactions, your need to be understood, your hunger for fairness. They plant ideas that shape your perception, make you doubt yourself, make you move according to their rhythm. Machiavelli would whisper from history, "He who controls perception, controls power." The first step in turning manipulation into momentum, therefore, is awareness. The moment you see manipulation for what it is, it begins to lose its spell. You start noticing how people use guilt to bind you, flattery to disarm you, fear to limit you. You begin to understand that emotional control is not cruelty. It is protection. To remain unprovoked when others expect a reaction is an act of quiet rebellion. Machiavelli believed that emotions should be governed, not suppressed. A wise person feels deeply but acts deliberately. The manipulator wants you to act instantly, impulsively, without thought. But you pause, you wait, you analyze, and in that pause, you shift the balance of power. He would advise when someone tries to control you, study them instead. Watch what they fear losing. People manipulate because they lack something: security, validation, control, relevance. They seek to fill that void through others. When you recognize their weakness, you no longer see them as threats. You see them as trapped in their own need for dominance. Machiavelli knew that every manipulator eventually becomes enslaved by their own game. They lie too much, overplay their hand, and create contradictions they can no longer hide. Your task is not to destroy them. It is to let time and truth expose them while you move ahead, untouched. There's a quiet art to using manipulation as momentum. You don't resist every force, you redirect it. Like a seasoned navigator, you let the wind of deceit fill your sails, steering toward your goal while others believe you drift. You agree when needed, stay silent when wise, appear naïve when convenient. Machiavelli understood this duality. True intelligence often wears the mask of simplicity. The fool who listens learns more than the arrogant who speaks. Turning manipulation into momentum also means transforming pain into power. When you realize someone has used you, betrayed you, or taken advantage of your goodness, your first instinct is anger. But Machiavelli would warn against this. Anger clouds vision. It burns energy that could be used to rise. He would say, never waste an offense. Use it to sharpen your judgment. Every betrayal teaches you where your boundaries should be. Every disappointment clarifies what you truly value. Every manipulation strengthens your ability to discern motive from truth. In this transformation, you learn a principle that defines power. To remain calm when others conspire is the ultimate victory. When people expect you to fall apart and instead you grow quieter, stronger, more focused, they lose their grip on you. You stop being predictable, and unpredictability is power. Machiavelli admired the mind that could bend without breaking, that could adapt to deceit without becoming deceitful. That is the difference between a manipulator and a strategist. The manipulator uses deceit to destroy others, while the strategist uses awareness to build resilience. There is another dimension to this art: perception management. Machiavelli believed that perception was more influential than truth because humans rarely see reality as it is, they see it as they feel it. If others think you are defeated, they act accordingly. If they think you are rising, they tread carefully. When you control perception, you control outcomes. This is not deceit, it is self-mastery. You learn to present composure when chaos erupts, to show dignity when disrespected, to move quietly when provoked. You do not need to correct every rumor, defend every attack, or expose every liar. Let their noise be their confession. Let your silence be your answer. And as you evolve, you discover something deeper. Manipulation only works on those who seek validation from others. The more secure you are in your worth, the less anyone can sway you. Machiavelli's insight was timeless: power begins within. When you no longer need constant approval, manipulation becomes irrelevant. You start to live not by reaction but by intention. You shape your own rhythm, your own code, your own truth. The manipulator loses control because they cannot move what stands still within. But Machiavelli would not end this lesson in idealism. He would remind you that in the real world, strategy requires subtlety. There will be times when you must let people believe they have won, times when you step back to advance later. He would call this the wisdom of the fox. patience disguised as surrender. The goal is not to outshout your enemies, but to outlast them. Because those who manipulate thrive on immediate victories, those who are wise play for legacy. So, what does it mean, in your daily life, to turn manipulation into momentum? It means observing patterns without bitterness. It means letting go of the need to expose every wrongdoer. It means understanding that energy spent on revenge is energy stolen from growth. It means learning to walk away with calm dignity rather than loud confrontation. You begin to see manipulation as an inevitable test of human nature, not a curse, but a teacher. In this, you embody Machiavelli's final truth. Life is a theater of intentions. Some act to deceive, others to defend, and a few to discover. You choose to be the latter. You learn, adapt, and rise quietly, knowing that your strength no longer depends on the honesty of others, but on the clarity of your own mind. And that is how you turn the games of others into the ground where you build your empire. There comes a moment in every person's life when they must decide whether to live as a reactor or as a strategist. The reactor lives in constant motion, guided by emotion, tossed around by other people's words, moods, and expectations. The strategist moves slower, quieter, but with intention. Machiavelli would say that detachment is not coldness. It is the discipline of seeing the world as it truly is, not as your emotions wish it to be. To lead, to survive, to thrive, you must learn to step outside of your feelings and into your foresight. He observed this truth in the courts of Florence, where passion destroyed more alliances than politics ever could. Princes who ruled from anger lost control. Advisors who reacted to insults lost influence. And yet, those who could detach, who could see betrayal and not break, who could witness flattery and not be blinded, became untouchable. Machiavelli saw detachment not as indifference, but as power refined. It is the art of remaining centered when others are spinning. Detachment begins with perspective. When someone wrongs you, the average person reacts, argues, defends, retaliates. But the Machiavellian mind pauses. It asks, what purpose does this serve? What outcome does this create? What advantage does this give me? It replaces reaction with reflection. This shift may seem small, but it changes everything, because the moment you think before you respond, you reclaim your agency. You stop being a pawn and become a player. The detachment Machiavelli speaks of is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of it. You still feel anger, love, envy, disappointment, but you do not serve them. They become signals, not commands. The wise do not kill emotion. They convert it into information. If someone makes you angry, they've revealed their influence over you. If someone makes you jealous, they've exposed where your self-worth depends on comparison. Every feeling becomes data, clues to where your power leaks away. Detachment, then, is emotional awareness sharpened into strategy. But this awareness takes training. The world will try to make you believe that detachment is heartlessness, that you must always express, always react, always participate in emotional chaos. Yet Machiavelli would tell you that this is precisely how the powerful lose their strength. Those who cannot detach from insult are ruled by pride. Those who cannot detach from flattery are ruled by ego. Those who cannot detach from fear are ruled by illusion. Detachment frees you from invisible masters. Machiavelli's brilliance lay in his understanding that not every battle is worth fighting. Detachment gives you the ability to watch certain conflicts burn themselves out without adding your own fire. Some situations solve themselves when you stop feeding them energy. The wise man sees beyond the moment. He knows that silence, patience, and observation are not inaction, they are preparation. While the emotional fight over trivialities, the detached build leverage, understanding, and control. Strategy is the natural child of detachment. Only when your mind is calm can you see the full board. The impulsive see only the next move. The detached see the entire game. Machiavelli believed that foresight begins with distance. When you step back, perspective widens. You see not only what people do, but why they do it. You recognize patterns, motives, and timing. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How can I use this?" In this state, every difficulty becomes a tool. Every setback becomes a seed. You no longer resist events. You repurpose them. If someone tries to harm your reputation, you use the moment to strengthen your humility. If someone betrays you, you study how they gained your trust and refine your discernment. If you face loss, you turn it into clarity about what truly matters. This is not optimism, this is sovereignty. You no longer beg for peace from the world. You create it from within. Machiavelli would remind you that emotional detachment does not mean isolation. It means clarity within connection. You can love deeply while remaining aware. You can trust others while still observing their nature. You can forgive without forgetting the lesson. Detachment allows you to love without losing yourself, to serve without being enslaved, to care without being consumed. It is the invisible armor that lets you walk through a world of chaos untouched. There is a story often told of leaders who fell because they could not detach. One ruler trusted his friend's words more than his own intuition and lost his kingdom. Another fell in love with his own image of being loved and became blind to betrayal. Machiavelli chronicled these mistakes not with cruelty but with realism. He knew the human mind clings to illusion, and detachment tears those illusions away. It is painful at first, but freedom always begins in discomfort. In your daily life, this detachment translates into small but powerful choices. When someone tries to provoke you online, you scroll past. When a coworker's attitude irritates you, you don't react, you analyze. When life seems unfair, you don't despair, you strategize. Every act of restraint becomes a quiet revolution against chaos. You stop living at the mercy of external events. You start dictating the meaning of those events yourself. Machiavelli would call this the supreme advantage, the ability to stay composed when others panic. In crisis, the detached mind sees opportunities invisible to the frantic. When everyone else is shouting, you hear the silence between their words. When they rush to act, you wait. And when you move, it is deliberate, decisive, and unstoppable. That is the difference between motion and power. The world respects stillness when it comes from strength. Detachment gives you that strength. You begin to walk through life with quiet confidence. You no longer explain your calm, you embody it. People sense that your peace cannot be shaken by praise or insult, by chaos or calm. That is when influence begins to grow around you effortlessly. Because true influence, as Machiavelli knew, does not shout, it resonates. And in that resonance lies the core of the Machiavellian strategy, the ability to shape outcomes not by force, but by foresight. Detachment makes you the observer, not the observed. The chess player, not the piece. You stop fighting for approval or attention and begin crafting your own destiny with deliberate precision. So when the world tries to pull you into its noise, remember this: stepping back is not running away. It is rising above. When you detach, you see clearly. When you see clearly, you choose wisely. And when you choose wisely, you no longer need to control others, you control yourself. That, Machiavelli would say, is the highest form of power. Every day, you wake up and step into a world that seems calm on the surface. Polite smiles, friendly words, casual handshakes. But beneath that surface, there are games being played. People who manipulate, drain your energy, twist your words, and quietly pull the strings to serve their own interests. You know them. The toxic colleague who acts helpful but schemes behind your back. The friend who uses guilt as currency, or even the superior who feeds on your self-doubt to maintain control. Niccolò Machiavelli, centuries ago, understood these patterns of human behavior better than anyone. He didn't view manipulation as evil in itself. He viewed it as a tool, something that existed in every society, every workplace, every relationship. and his brilliance was in teaching how to recognize it and outsmart it. Today, we uncover Machiavelli's secrets to outsmarting toxic people every day. 3 timeless rules that turn manipulation into your mirror, deceit into your advantage, and every toxic encounter into an opportunity for power and peace. The first secret is simple: observe before reacting. Machiavelli believed that power is rooted in perception, not emotion. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They push you to defend, to explain, to get angry, because every emotional outburst gives them data. They learn your weaknesses through your words. But when you stay calm, you become unreadable, and unreadable people are ungovernable. In The Prince, Machiavelli writes, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. This is your shield. Appear kind, patient, understanding, but let no one see your true moves until it is too late. When they try to provoke you, smile. When they try to manipulate you, stay silent longer than they expect." Toxic people fear mystery because it denies them control. You are not their pawn, you are their puzzle. The second secret: mirror their strategy, but never their intent. Machiavelli's genius wasn't about becoming ruthless, it was about using the same tools your adversaries use, but with awareness, purpose, and restraint. Toxic people use charm to disarm, half-truths to influence, and emotional hooks to anchor you. Learn their tactics, not to imitate cruelty, but to understand it. When someone flatters you excessively, see the manipulation behind the praise. When they play the victim, recognize the bid for sympathy and power. Machiavelli warned that men are so simple and so much creatures of circumstance that the deceiver will always find someone ready to be deceived. Refuse to be that someone. Instead, practice tactical empathy. Act as if you understand their world, let them feel secure in their own illusion, and guide the narrative subtly toward your terms. Outsmarting them doesn't mean fighting them. It means leading them, quietly, toward an outcome where you win without ever entering battle. The third and final secret: control the environment, not the person. Machiavelli believed that trying to fix or change toxic people is like trying to control the weather, futile and exhausting. Power lies not in changing others, but in shaping the space in which they operate. In modern terms, this means setting unshakable boundaries. Limit their access to your time, your emotions, your energy. Decide what you will tolerate and what you will not, and then enforce it with quiet firmness. Don't argue your boundaries, live them. Toxic people lose power the moment they realize they can no longer drain yours. In the court of Florence, Machiavelli watched princes and politicians rise and fall because they underestimated the slow corrosion of manipulation. His lesson: if you cannot trust the person, design the system so you don't need to. Control the environment, and you control the outcome. Think about it. Every toxic interaction you've had was an attempt to pull you into someone else's emotional game, to make you respond, justify, defend, or collapse. But what if, instead, you chose to rise above the noise? What if you began to treat life as Machiavelli treated politics? Not as chaos to survive, but as a chessboard to master. Because here's the truth: you don't need to become cold, manipulative, or heartless to outsmart toxic people. You only need to be clear, calm, and deliberate. Machiavelli's wisdom is not a call to cruelty, it's a call to awareness. He reminds you that power and peace can coexist. If you learn to think rather than react, to see rather than assume, to lead rather than follow. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, pause. Let silence do the work. The next time you feel manipulated, observe. What are they truly after? And when you sense that familiar drain of energy, remember, you are not powerless. You are the observer, the strategist, the one who knows the rules, and therefore cannot be ruled. Machiavelli once said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." Outsmarting toxic people is not about waiting for them to change. It's about changing how you play the game, because in the end, life will always have its manipulators, but it will also always reward those who can see through them, rise above them, and lead quietly in their shadow. That is how you turn everyday toxicity into timeless strength. That is how you live, not as a victim of others' games, but as the author of your own power.